Hi everyone, Deacon Ed McCormick here at St. John the Baptist Catholic Community. I was visiting my mother this weekend, so didn't get to preach, but after hearing the gospel and the part about the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew, I really wanted to share with you a few thoughts. And I want to speak to you today about the possibility of becoming more fully human. And I want to suggest to you that the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 through chapter 8, is Jesus' call to Israel and to all of us to become more fully human. Let me explain. You know, when you read that gospel, it's very challenging because Jesus is telling us, you don't get angry, don't lust after a man or woman. He's telling us don't mock other people by calling them fools or idiots. He's telling us don't get divorced. And then he says don't lie. Tell the truth. Let your yes be yes. And these are challenging commands of his. So I want to help you understand what's going on here. The first thing is this. We have to always remember that Jesus is speaking within the context of his conviction that the kingdom of God is coming and arriving on earth, that God is becoming king, and the reign of Caesar and Herod and Pilate is ending, and that God is finally reigning as king through Jesus. And this means a whole new way of living, a new regime is taking over the entire world. And that involves the transformation of who we are as human beings. Now, notice what he's doing in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, well, you know the commandment to don't kill. Well, he says, I say to you, don't get angry at your brother. You know that Moses allowed for divorce, but I'm saying don't divorce. What's he doing here? He is intensifying the commandments. The commandment is, thou shalt not kill thy neighbor. And Jesus intensifies it by, in effect, taking us back to the origin of what can lead to murder and to violence, and that is anger. And he says, don't call your brother a fool, don't mock your neighbor, because he knows, especially in small families and small communities, that anger is infectious. It can just set a community on fire, and it can lead to murder. But he's interested in any kind of behavior that destroys relationships. That's what anger does. That's, of course, what divorce does, but it's what lust does. It's what lying does. And so Jesus is, on the one hand, intensifying the commandments. On the other hand, he's actually taking those commandments and saying, let's look at what are the real kind of psychological and social origins that the commandment is saying, let's not have that. Because he thinks that the kingdom of God is coming, and that means a time of new hearts, a time of new minds. Moses allowed for divorce because he knew that humanity had hard hearts. But now that the kingdom is coming, we're going to be freed from our anger because we're going to be filled with God's peace. We're going to be freed from lust because we're being filled with God's love. We're going to speak the truth instead of lying. Now, the other thing that's going on is not only does Jesus kind of detecting what is at the origins of the destruction of communities, anger and lust and lying, but he also knows that when we engage in anger, when we engage in lust, when we lie, we are reducing other people to objects. Anger collapses our vision in a sense, so that all we can now see is not a person, but the person we want to hurt. Lust reduces our vision so that we stop seeing this person, this man or this woman. We just see body parts. We just see what we want to get out of them. When we lie, we stop seeing relationships in people, but we are now, all we can see is what we want to get out of manipulating this conversation or situation. What Jesus is saying is God's kingdom is coming. He's bringing himself and the power of the Spirit, and that is enabling us for the first time to live new kinds of lives, to become new kinds of human beings. Now, to not get angry requires a lot of healing, because anger is always a response, often a protective response that we learned a long time ago when we were hurt. And we need to come to Christ and be filled with his Spirit so that he can heal us of those prior wounds and free us from our anger. He needs to come to us so that the need that is behind our lust can get fulfilled in healthy relationships, so that we can start to relate to people as fully human beings, as whole persons. And instead of needing to manipulate and twist to get what we want, when we discover that Jesus is with us and we live the fullness of his life, we no longer need to do that. And instead, Christ is calling us to new kinds of communities, new kinds of family relationships, new ways of being human with each other that really only come about by being with him and living from his Spirit, because he embodies the Sermon on the Mount. I'll see you next time.